This video is a film study preview of the Detroit Lions' visit to Green Bay to take on the Packers in Week 1 of the NFL season. I'm going to focus this video on Jared Goff and what he's been able to accomplish against the Packers defense for the last 3 years, specifically 2022 to 2024. Even though in his career overall he's 7-2 as a starter and has some spectacular stats, he's really shredded Green Bay's defense the last 3 seasons, with one exception, right? That's the Thanksgiving Day loss in 2023. I think it's 29-22. Otherwise, the Packers, they haven't been able to stop or even slow down Goff. The impetus for this video is or was how much can Green Bay actually do to impact Goff's processing, his ability to get rid of the ball quickly, and now what impact does Micah Parsons have on that dynamic? What has really been a one-sided situation in terms of Goff throwing the football against Green Bay's defense. You know, Parsons is a spectacular pass rusher, right? Well, he's a great football player overall. He's hit, he played some inside linebacker in college, but he's been an outside linebacker edge rusher, if you will, in Dallas and now with Green Bay. He's got 52.5 sacks in 4 seasons, along with 9 forced fumbles. His season averages are ridiculous, right? 14 sacks, 2 forced fumbles a year. Clearly, he's going to have some impact for this team. They also have Rashawn Gary on the other side, and he's a guy who's been a force at times in the pass rush against Detroit. I'll show some of that film later on. Specifically, it's his 3 sacks on Thanksgiving Day in 2023 that directly led to or impacted or influenced, I should say, Goff's 3 fumbles on that day that really were the difference. That's the lone win for the Packers in the last 3 seasons against Goff and the Lions. This is a film study look at how Goff has had their defense under control in pretty much most situations. Jeff Hafley, I think, will be in his 2nd season as a defensive coordinator in Green Bay. And how do you begin to even try to defend what Goff can do, which is execute a wide range of concepts and not rely on just 1 or 2 players to get that done? Tim Patrick, Josh Reynolds, Brock Wright even, David Montgomery, some names that aren't considered high-level pass producers in the receiving game. And Goff has went to them in high-leverage situations, 3rd or 4th downs, to thwart Green Bay's defense when the Packers are trying to take away Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamison Williams, or even a Sam Laporta. The high-level production and efficiency that Goff has shown, I think, is pretty unique, even among the NFL, the highest quarterbacks of the NFL, the highest quality quarterbacks of the NFL. I'm going to begin this one by focusing on 3rd down conversions, where Goff has just displayed a steel nerve, and elite pre-snap recognition, if you ask me. And I think that's evidenced by or exhibited by his 69% completion percentage against the Packers in the last 3 years overall. So we'll start this with 3rd and 2, like I said, 3rd down situations, a 3rd and 2, first possession. This is Week 14 last year, the 34-31 win against the Packers. Goff is really good at identifying someone who either is going to be a blitzer or he suspects will. And I'm going to use this as a foundational element to what we're going to talk about here initially. So where Goff is looking, number 1, but also this motion by St. Brown. So St. Brown going across the field right to left from the boundary, this is the boundary line, into the field, the wide side of the field. And Goff is looking directly to that side where St. Brown motioned over to Tim Patrick's side, and Patrick is essentially running an outside release against the corner such that he can contribute a screen, a pick, whatever you want to call it, so that this defender can't get over the top to go defend St. Brown. Again, remember, it's a 3rd and 2, right? So the Lions are just going to take their 2 or 3 yards and move on. Goff, quick processing, understands what's happening here. They've been able to manipulate at times the Packers' defense, if you ask me, meaning Goff is smooth, quick recognition of what's happening, and I think this play builds off of the one that I just showed and just really illustrates how much Goff understands each of the defenses that he faces in a particular week. So very similar dynamic. He's pointing to this edge defender. I think it's Cooper, but I could be wrong. And motioning or telling St. Brown, okay, you can go ahead and go across. Same setup, right? Ball on the right hash, motion to the field. On the last play, the previous play, it was a pick, a screen by Patrick with an outside release. basically putting this corner in a lot of conflict. St. Brown ran into the flats on the 3rd and 2. Completion. Now they're building off of that, even though this is actually earlier in the season. Goff is still looking to that side. So focusing on Patrick as a possibility or St. Brown. This is a ridiculous route. This is a Hall of Fame play, if you ask me. St. Brown making it look like he's going to come back. So a China in, whip route, if you will, motion across, put his foot in the ground, and then come back to the inside. That's what St. Brown is selling, and he's doing a great job of it. Goff knows that he's not going to go to Patrick, throws this ball. I mean, this is the one location where it's perfect placement, perfect pace, and perfect timing. And what I mean by timing, the pace on the ball is related to the timing. When you get the end zone angle, you'll see what I mean. In that he created a margin for error for St. Brown that didn't exist if he held onto this ball longer. If this ball was later upon arrival, and I think that's one of Goff's hidden skills, not just his pre-snap recognition, but where he's able to deliver the football, accuracy, and the time at which it arrives. So the same dynamic that I talked about. I think he's pointing to 56 right as he tells St. Brown to motion across. And Goff just really cool or calm, if you ask me, looking around. Really doesn't appear to be caring about anything at all because he knows the coverage, in my opinion. You got man here, man on the motion guy, which is St. Brown. Goff is looking solely in that direction, understands the coverage, knows where he's going to go. And this is what I mean when I say timing and placement. He gets the ball here and creates a margin for error related to the sideline, the out-of-bounds line, if you will, so that St. Brown isn't trying so hard to get his feet in bounds because he's got more time, more space to do so. The margin for error in the NFL is already small. I think Goff does a great job generally for his receivers, tight ends, running backs, and getting them the ball in a location that creates a wider net, a wider margin for error than is typical. And he's got really no fear on some of these 4th down situations like that one. Those 2 plays in the beginning, like I said, I think are build off of one another and just show you how Goff and the Lions offense, specifically under Ben Johnson, but I know that it's going to continue under John Morton, they're able to put defenses in conflict with the same look that can be a platform to produce 2 different plays. This is that Week 14 game, and this is a 3rd and goal. I think it's about a little less than 9 minutes left, and Green Bay leads 28-24. 3rd and goal, 13 personnel. I mean, St. Brown is off the field. Jameson Williams is off the field. You're going to get motion by this tight end, Zylstra. Really only 2 routes here. The first one that Goff tries to look for is going to be Laporta, and he gets jammed up. And then you've got an absolute win down here at the bottom side for Tim Patrick. Play action fake. And I think Goff immediately is looking to the top side where Laporta is getting jammed up by a safety, and I believe that's a linebacker. And then there's Goff looking in that direction. You got a clean win down here to the bottom side by Patrick. Not once, really, but twice. Loses 21. And look how quickly Goff has gotten to the second read. I know I slow this down sometimes. Perhaps it's a little bit too much in your opinion, but the idea is focusing on some of the small details that might get lost if you just running the play through. I think it's extremely interesting that in a 3rd down, a high leverage situation, again, I think you're losing the game at this point, 28-24. St. Brown, not on the field. Jameson Williams, not on the field. Right? Jahmyr Gibbs, not even on the field. And in this case, you end up going to Tim Patrick. It's a big win, in fact. I mean, there's a lot of room here for Patrick in terms of his win. And it shows, if you ask me, that Goff trusts everyone. Everyone that's involved in the play. Everyone that is a part of the read and possibly going to get the football, Goff trusts them. The Packers have shown their hand here pre-snap, right? The same play from the end zone angle. Man here, and then 25 is man on Zylstra. Zylstra, of course, is going to go in motion. Unique or somewhat underrated pre-snap communication. This guy was responsible for Zylstra. 58 is taking him over. That's why he's raising his hand up in the air. Play fake for Goff. This, it doesn't really affect Goff at all, what I just talked about. But you can see where Goff is looking, right? He's looking right here where Laporta is. getting jammed up. I guess it's actually 2 defensive backs. My apologies for that. There may actually be a hold here on Kevin Zeitler as well. I remember this play now from last season. Comes back to Patrick. Huge win over the middle. It's the second time just in this video where I've showed you Goff's ability to get through a read quickly. I guess he went to St. Brown initially in some of these big moments. Again, we're all focusing on 3rd and 4th downs here, but there's many players that Goff trusts on this Lions team in high leverage situations. Tim Patrick, and he's gone, obviously jettisoned at this point. Isaac Tesla apparently is going to take his place. I think Goff has remarkable savvy and grit in these moments, meaning some coaches, some quarterbacks at the NFL level and others, they believe in players, not plays, when it comes down to winning time. 3rd or 4th down, or maybe late in the 4th quarter. Goff seems to be almost someone that goes on the other in the other direction. He believes in plays, not players. Meaning, if you're on the field and you're a part of the read, part of the play design, then he will get you the football if the coverage calls for it. I think there's something to be said for that. His willingness to distribute the football to so many different guys. It's actually the second time in that game where I think he goes to Patrick to overcome brief leads for the Packers in the second half. He's just got incredible composure in these moments, but specifically, if you ask me, against the Packers. Another 3rd down. Again, all of this is Green Bay film. 3rd and 3. This is on the first possession in Week 14. It's an empty set. So the concept is they've put St. Brown and Laporta here in the slot together, so you would think those guys are going to be the targets. No, this one ends up being Jameson Williams, who won't really be featured too much in this video, to be honest with you. You can see the switch release by St. Brown, who was outside, and Laporta, who was inside, so they are switching their release. Goff is definitely looking in that direction. You can't blame him, right? There's St. Brown checking up. Again, this is a 3rd and 3. Laporta with a quick route out in the flats, and then the secondary portion of this, or the third part of the read, is going to be Jameson Williams over the middle. A clean win against the DB. Additional to that, there's a really cool portion of the design here that I want to highlight, and it's got something to do with the bottom side of the screen, the X receiver, which is Tim Patrick. So he is down here. Keep in mind, the route that it ends up being the target is something like that for Jameson Williams. And Patrick is going to bring his route underneath. And what that ends up doing is it holds this corner here, who's responsible for Patrick and man, because it's the backside of quads, or a 4-receiver formation to one side and then 1 to the other. And you can see that this corner is held, occupied, if you will. And then when Jameson Williams catches this football, this entire portion of the field is wide open and available to him. The Packers, were really lucky that this one didn't go to the house. In this case, Williams, really runs out of real estate. I would say that Goff, in terms of the weapons he's willing to use, but also the number of concepts that he can execute on 3rd and 4th down. He's like a pitcher, a Major League Baseball pitcher, who has like 7 or 8 pitches. I usually do basketball comparisons or maybe combat sports. So maybe this one isn't a great one, but he reminds me of someone who, he doesn't have a 98-mile-an-hour fastball. Maybe he throws 93 or 94, but it's good enough to get the job done. He's got a great slider, a sick changeup that you really can't detect. Maybe he throws a cutter or even a screwball, something that moves into a right-hander, which is very, if you know anything about baseball, high-level softball either, anything that moves into a right-hander is going to give them a tremendous amount of difficulty if you combine that with something that moves away. And then on top of that, really accurate, really smart. That's Jared Goff, if you ask me. Someone who isn't going to overpower you or maybe overwhelm you in a lot of situations, but just works really hard pre-snap and then post-snap at getting the ball to the correct guy at the correct location and on time. Another 3rd down is 12 personnel. So when we say 12 personnel, we mean 2 tight ends, 1 here and 1 here. I think it's Zylstra. It's actually 13 personnel. I have that mislabeled. Laporta's up here as the top side receiver, lined up as an outside receiver. It's another thing to talk about in terms of trading away Tim Patrick, is that Laporta can be used as a receiver oftentimes as well. A little bit of a play action and then quick completion to Montgomery. So this is being used. I'm showing this play to illustrate where I think Goff is trying to go with the football. It's a Tampa 2. So this Mike linebacker is getting a drop. He's getting some depth, and he's getting underneath of, or he can deal with that route by Laporta. Clear out concept here by Williams. Tight end into the flats. I think it's Brock Wright. And there's a little bit of pressure off the right side. I think it's against Sewell. 55 up here. Goff, when you get the end zone angle, you'll see that, he doesn't look at that at all. He just steps up, keeps his composure, and then dumps the ball underneath to Montgomery really quickly. He gets through reads at a super fast rate, in my opinion, even for the NFL. All of those guys are great processors, but I think Goff is among the best. And what I mean when I say among the best, I mean the top 4 or 5 guys in the NFL at processing what's happening. Sewell, to be honest with you, watching the film from 24 and 23, he had more trouble in some of these pass rush situations than I would have predicted, to be honest with you. He's kind of jumpy here. I mean, he's kind of flat setting somewhat to 55, trying to jump him, if you will. Play action to Montgomery, who works through contact while Goff is looking downfield. And then Goff is willing and able to navigate the pocket, get it to Montgomery, because a really nice job downfield of coverage by, I think it's Walker, number 7, who's off screen to the bottom. He was the Mike linebacker that I talked about in the Tampa 2. Another conversion on third down. He's underrated. When I say Goff is underrated, I mean league-wide, nationally. I don't think that Lions fans underrate him because you know what you've got. You've got a guy who can get things accomplished in high-leverage situations with a ton of different players on the field. It really doesn't matter who's available. The concepts are what Goff understands, and in my opinion, that's the reason why I did the analogy of a Major League Baseball pitcher with 7 or 8 pitches, because he can execute a wider array of concepts in high-leverage moments than most quarterbacks, even the top 10 or 12 type guys. So this is film from week 8, the 24-14 win in Green Bay. He's going to target this wheel route by Jahmyr Gibbs, emanating from the backfield. And they're attacking this linebacker. I think it's Cooper, but I could be wrong. They're trying to do so with a pick, rub, screen, whatever you want to call it, by Tim Patrick. So Patrick actually is really good at these things normally, kind of creating some space for the receiver by a pick or a rub, whatever you want to call it, shield. Goff is clearly setting up to throw it immediately to Gibbs into the boundary. It's a low-angle throw. There's really not much space at all to get the ball to Gibbs here at all. I wanted to show some plays that were unsuccessful. I'll actually show an interception in here. And then later on in the video, we'll focus on the 2023 game where Rashawn Gary and Preston Smith really gave the offensive line trouble and throttled Goff, especially early in the game. 2 more that is on 3rd or 4th down. So in yellow here is Raymond, and then in blue is the route by Jamison Williams. I call it over-under, with Williams running the over route and Raymond running the under. St. Brown essentially acts as a clear-out route, but oftentimes that's where Goff is going to look initially on the play, either because he's A, reading St. Brown, or B, he's trying to move defenders in that location. And you do have the possibility here on a 3rd down, like I said, of maybe throwing this ball out in the flats to Gibbs, forcing Walker to recover and make a tackle. But in any case, the pressure kind of forces Goff to step up a little bit, and then finds Raymond, who's a dangerous receiver that I think is dramatically underrated, if you ask me, for a big gain over the middle. The one idea I want to make sure I get across for Goff in some of these 3rd and 4th down moments is that he's egalitarian almost. He doesn't rely on one player. He doesn't rely on one scheme consistently. He's willing to go to anybody. And this is a play that I want to kind of use to illustrate it. This is a 4th and goal. This is back from 2024 here. It's in the 3rd quarter. The Packers actually lead 21-17 at this point. And the Lions, are going with this kind of sugar huddle, is what a lot of people call it, basically hiding St. Brown. And you can see St. Brown is actually even like crouching down a little bit. Look at how he leaves the huddle. St. Brown is clearly trying to hide, And I think Gibbs is trying to run at the same pace as Laporta, almost trying to use Laporta's body to hide or obscure his location. So there's a lot of coaching here. Basically, Gibbs is at receiver, St. Brown is at running back. Clearly, they're trying to get the ball to St. Brown, right? He's going to run the flat concept in a snag route, but it's Patrick once again who ends up being the target down here in the end zone. So Goff is looking that way immediately. He's very quick to read things, and he also has confidence in every one of the players that's a part of the read. Patrick is actually turning backwards. He's actually rotating clockwise instead of snagging this up this way and turning over his left shoulder. Patrick is actually going here and turning clockwise over his right shoulder to make himself available. Why? He's trying to pick or screen that linebacker. Well, the corner went with St. Brown. Quick release by Goff. Just an absolute strike, if you ask me. Look, the Lions took, I think, a 24-21 lead on that one, a fourth down. And, in fact, later on in the game, they would take a 31-28 lead on another touchdown to Patrick. This is a unique situation for me in that he trusts everyone. And the more film I watch of Goff in these moments, the more I am impressed by his willingness to share the ball really far down the Lions roster. It's not every quarterback in the NFL that executes things in these high-leverage moments with the same propensity to share the football across the roster. Let's move on to some shotgun stuff. I've actually displayed some of those plays, some plays already from the shotgun, but I think Goff has been really difficult for the Packers to stop in these moments. He's really good on play action, right? He's back to the defense, taking advantage of the effectiveness of the run game, and then the defense possibly overcommitting against another one of those setups or those looks. We know that. But his film against the Packers is riddled with shotgun pass concepts where he's using his line of sight, his height, to go through the reads fast, maybe even get Packers defensive backs moving at times with his focus, basically where he's looking. And now I didn't review some of the numbers earlier in the lead-in, but I will here. From 2022 to 2024, here's Goff against the Packers. 69% completion percentage, and that includes 50 of 63 in 2024. That's a 79% completion percentage last year. Overall, in the last 3 seasons, 9 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and that's only 221 yards passing per game. That's skewed a little bit by the Week 8 win on the road in Green Bay last year, where they didn't need much offense. They got the pick 6 from Kirby late in the second quarter and really rode things out defensively in the second half. Can Parsons change this dynamic? Meaning the clean football that Goff has generally played against the Packers defense. I'll explore that a little bit in a moment at the end. I wanted to make my previews shorter for these games, but this one, being as it's a week ahead of time, ended up being quite lengthy, full length almost. I'll have at least 2 other dynamics that I want to cover from this game, mostly focusing on Detroit's offense, but somewhat focusing on their defense. In this case, let's look at shotgun plays, where I think Goff has really been ahead of the Packers' defensive coverages and blitzes almost consistently. This first one is a 1st and 10, and I think illustrates a bunch of things. Number one, it's a very similar setup to the first 2 plays that I showed you, in that St. Brown is motioning across right to left with the ball on the right hash. So you got a very similar dynamic there, if you ask me. Remember that St. Brown went out into the flats on the first one, a completion on a 3rd and 2, and then the brilliant touchdown from the same game where he faked the China in and then ran back to the fade, and Goff put it in a place where only St. Brown could get to it. Here, Goff is initially looking what appears to be in the middle of the field. I think he's checking with this safety. So I think he's looking here to see what that safety is doing. Is that safety rolling to center field? Is he staying in a half-field mindset, which he is? I think Goff basically is understanding what this safety is doing here by only looking at this safety here. He may also be trying to hold the field side safety to open up the possibility to come back to St. Brown, who's running a little bit of a stutter up top. So we're talking about St. Brown here. We'll let it flow through a little bit so you can see the route. Try to focus on St. Brown at the top of the screen. You do have that clear out concept, the seam between the top of the numbers and the hash here, and then St. Brown kind of stuttering this and taking up to the sideline. Neither one of those is the target. That's my point. I think Goff can look at one defender and basically use that defender's reaction to understand what someone else is doing on the other side of the field. I think that actually got him in trouble with a Week 14 pick last year. But in terms of who actually is targeted here, it's Patrick on the backside. And he's got a really cool kind of swipe down to clear that corner immediately. And then gets ISO'd on an inside linebacker over the middle. 56 Cooper, who's a fantastic talent. Like I said, it's a 1st and 10, ends up gaining 9 yards. From an ex-receiver standpoint, of course, Patrick's not there, neither is Josh Reynolds. Tesla is apparently going to get a lot of the reps. I would look for Sam Laporta to play a lot at the X as well. He's been extremely effective at it. They didn't use him there as much last season once Patrick showed up and proved himself to be effective, particularly in the red zone like I showed earlier. But between Laporta and Tesla, as well as Jameson Williams and Raymond or even St. Brown, you've got more than enough options for Goff to be effective. This is what I'm talking about in terms of his quick processing and his ability to look at one defender and basically read what someone else might be doing without even looking at them. So this is snag flat concept. Gibbs running out into the flats. Snag, which is very similar to the touchdown I showed you on the 4th down. Patrick is running a little bit deeper here because they're not down into the goal line. Got an interception by the corner to the boundary, cutting underneath of Patrick's route. I don't think Goff looked at that corner at all. I think Goff is right now looking here and here and understanding what the coverage should be and how this corner should be reacting to a route out in the flats by Jahmyr Gibbs. But the corner doesn't do that. The corner basically plays Goff's eyes. So in some ways, some would say he's not playing it honest. Goff's quick decision-making, his ability to process things, if you ask me, is so high that he can look at one or two defenders and know what someone else should be doing. And that's why I picked this play to show you that in this case, Goff's ability to process things quickly, the corner should be on Jahmyr Gibbs, if I understand it correctly. You're more than welcome to let me know, if I'm missing something in the comment section. And Goff's high-level awareness and intelligence, at least on this play, kind of actually worked against him. This is when, of course, Detroit's 17-7 halftime lead in Week 14 suddenly became a 21-17 deficit in the third quarter, which they overcame, the 2 touchdown passes to Patrick. Another 12 personnel, and this is to illustrate a little bit of what I'm talking about. Laporta down here as the X receiver. The other tight end is Brock Wright, lined up as the number 1 to the outside, the trip side, the top side of our field. Ben Johnson did that a lot. Go 12 personnel and put a tight end outside, basically to see how you were going to line up. You're giving away your coverage at a certain point. Gibbs' route is blue. That's this one right here. And it's going to occupy Walker, the Mike linebacker. This one, tells you a lot about Ben Johnson's offense in terms of a boundary side focus. You can see all of Goff's attention is to the bottom side of the field, right? All of this action here. To the top side, you do have St. Brown running kind of like a whip route or China in. But Goff smoothly steps up in the pocket and just delivers a beautiful throw to Laporta. Full extension, right? Making the catch against the linebacker, number 58. You can see that Gibbs occupied Walker here and really opened up that direct line of sight from Goff into Laporta. I will give you the end zone angle so you can see it. Let's pull this back one more time and let you guys kind of watch it a little bit more full speed. You can see Laporta 58, not a whole lot of space there. It's a 2nd and 8. Maybe I had it mislabeled earlier on. My apologies for that. Same play from the end zone angle. 58 is the guy that's going to end up with Laporta kind of hanging all over him for a moment. And then Walker matches up with Gibbs. But him, a Walker moving out to the right is really what opens up, you know, all of this space for Goff to throw it onto. For Laporta against 58, you can see Walker is dealing with Gibbs. About as good a catch as it gets for anyone, for that matter, but especially a tight end, a guy Laporta. If you believe what I'm saying, I think he can play some X receiver, and in fact, since the moment he showed up in Detroit as a rookie, he showed the ability to play X receiver. That first game against Kansas City had 2 wins against Trent McDuffie as an outside receiver on the backside of the formation. Now, how does this all fit with the Packers, right? Trying to preview that actual game. I guess the Packers are going with pass rush as their answer in general for stopping the pass. Gary has 39 career sacks. That's number 52. He's a really good player, underrated if you ask me. Made his first Pro Bowl in 2024, in fact. And he was the thorn in the Lions' side. I guess the idea is that him and Van Ness will complement Parsons and create more negative yardage plays. I get it. They're turnover focused. However, I can't blame Lions fans who are unconcerned. I really cannot, because of how adaptable the offense has been, but specifically Goff. Think of the win in Green Bay Week 8 last year. You get the pick 6 from Kirby to finish the second quarter or cap the second quarter. And at that point, you're in control. The defense just has to do its job. There are times where Goff and the offense, in my opinion, recognize the dynamic and what's needed, and they can shift gears. They'll adapt basically not just to the game situation, but also what do we need to do to be effective? Should we run the ball this week? Maybe Green Bay's run defense is weaker. I'm not willing to go that far, but I recognize that viewpoint is out there. Okay, fine. Then we'll get the ball to Gibbs and Montgomery, a total of 40 times each, and we'll get out of here with a win. If your team is lacking corners, another perspective that Lions fans and others have talked about with Green Bay, then we'll let St. Brown, Jamison Williams, and Laporta really get into you. It's a dynamic group in terms of the pass game, and we're kind of highlighting that here throughout this video, right? If Green Bay's strategy, practice, or a global idea is we're going to attack them in the pass rush, well, yeah, that has been how the Packers have succeeded when they have against the Lions. And in fact, it's been the tackles in those situations. Decker, really struggled in that 2023 game, but Sewell as well. And I'll show you a little bit of that video here in a moment. It's really been the inside rush moves from larger size DNs, like a Preston Smith, who's no longer with Green Bay. I think he's actually unsigned at this point, to be honest with you. This is first one's from 2024, talking about Green Bay's pass rush. It's a 3rd and 5, and then we'll really get back to talking about the 2023 game that the Lions blew on Thanksgiving Day at home. So it's a little bit of a levels concept. Laporta is lined up out there with St. Brown. And that's exactly where Goff is looking, at least initially. He's looking to the top side where you have Laporta and St. Brown, on this kind of layered release from a stacked alignment. And this is what has been, I think, an issue in terms of the pass rush dealing with Rashawn Gary, is that he'll go upfield, and then this is a designed pick that occupies Zeitler and also kind of picks or screens Sewell. And it's Walker, the inside linebacker, super talented guy, right, from Georgia, that clears a path for Rashawn Gary. We'll let this go one more time. One thing to note is 55 is dropping out of here, kind of getting in Goff's view. 7 is going to run the pick, occupy on Zeitler, and then Gary's path is going to go upfield and then go underneath of that pick. It's designed to be late, if you ask me, and it works out brilliantly, at least in this case, for Green Bay. Give you the end zone angle so you can see a little bit more of it here. We're talking about what happens with Sewell and Zeitler here from the standpoint of how this rush works out. So we'll start left to right. The DN 55 drops out underneath of Laporta and St. Brown. Gary is going to go upfield with Sewell initially, And then once the pick occurs, he will loop underneath of this pick here by Walker. So they're not winning necessarily against Sewell, but they're using his effectiveness to draw out Zeitler. So Zeitler drops back to take Walker, and then Gary folds underneath. I think that's probably Zeitler's fault, to be honest with you. It's a really nicely done stunt in terms of the timing of it. Gets to Goff. Just fortunate here, obviously, that it didn't end up being a strip sack. That game I like that game in 2023 where Goff, had 3 fumbles. Gary had 3 sacks. Preston Smith had 2 really nice wins against Sewell. We'll highlight a little bit of that here. This is actually in the first quarter. I think this is the first strip sack. So operating off the left side, this is Gary. Watch the rush path that he takes. So the defensive tackle is going to occupy the left guard. And then you're getting a stunt from this defensive tackle here to the inside. And then Walker coming on this rush path here. Not necessarily a win for Preston Smith here against Sewell, but that does occur sometimes in this film, not particularly on this play. So it's an inside frame from Gary, and then Decker's foot kind of gets hung up with the left guard dealing with, I think it's 97, excuse me. And then that's exactly where Gary folds underneath. It was not planned like the previous one that I showed you from 2024, but functionally it worked out in the same way, right? 97 goes upfield, and then Gary folds underneath as Goff steps up and gets the first strip sack of the day. If you recall, that was a really disappointing game. It was a disappointing 4 days for me, really. I thought that Detroit was going to blow out the Bears on that Sunday. And, of course, they needed a come from behind win in that one, and then blew the game on Thanksgiving Day. I think that was one of the more disappointing stretches. One of only 2 or maybe 3 times in the last 3 years that I've seen Detroit under Dan Campbell not come out, totally prepared and ready for the moment. This is a nasty spin move by Preston Smith against Sewell, and it's going to be a clean win. So the defensive tackles are occupying the guards. In this case, he's stepping across, I think, the right guard's face a little bit. And here's the win, or the beginning of the end for this particular move for Preston Smith. So he's stepping upfield, trying to rip a little bit on Sewell with his inside arm. And he's just got Sewell's posture down quick enough such that it's a beautiful spin back to the inside for Smith. He doesn't finish the play, but 94 does. And again, it's another strip sack, or another fumble at least. Packers fans are probably hoping that Micah Parsons, is going to be able to. In fact, I think that was on consecutive drives, but I could be wrong. I think there was 3 of them in the first half. Packers fans are probably hoping that that's what's going to be able to be recreated. If they're thinking that's going to happen against Sewell consistently, I would just have to disagree. Under center sack out of a really unique look for the Packers. This is Steelers-esque. And I think Goff is either playing games with the defense or he's recognized something here and he's canceled the play and then reloaded it. But in any case, the Packers have both edge defenders, Gary and Preston Smith, on the same side, down into the boundary. And the concept or the routes that are going to run or emanate from this formation for the Lions off of play action is the Gibbs into the boundary, clear out down here at the bottom side, and then there's 2 tight ends on the field, one of which is Skipper, who's a jumbo and reported eligible. Laporta is running the over concept. So really this would be, I would consider it a flood concept. Goff is looking to that downside of the screen like I diagrammed. Preston Smith is matching or dropping out to match Gibbs. Walker is getting underneath of Laporta's route. And then check out Rashawn Gary, how he does this. So they drop Smith out, like I said. Gary actually folds underneath and goes around and comes through the middle of the defense to obstruct Goff and track him down to get one of his 3 sacks on the day. About as chaotic, right, a performance for the Lions offensive line as I really remember in the last 2 or 3 years. I'm talking about when everyone is healthy. It was kind of shocking to see Gary be able to generate so much pressure and have so much impact. So from the Packers' standpoint, that's what they're looking for consistently, if they can put him and Parsons on the field at the same time. 4th and 4 here from the second quarter. At this point, the Packers are already ahead, 23-6, and a really disappointing end that quite clearly could have been a fumble. So tight end Laporta is going to kind of check up here, and I think Goff is trying to go to the bottom side. It's Josh Reynolds, who was still with the team at that time. Again, it's 2023 film. So up here to the top side is Sewell, and the bottom side is Gary. Preston Smith with a completely dominant win against Sewell, unfortunately. I think Goff is looking here, but he's probably going to go here to this route over the middle a little bit late. Like I said, it's a 4th and 4. Unfortunately, it doesn't have time to get there. We'll give the end zone angle. Do I think things like this are going to happen consistently? Is that why I'm showing it to you? No. The dynamic that the Packers and the Packers fans want to occur consistently against Detroit's, is getting pressure with Gary and then Parsons. In this case, it happens to be Preston Smith. A quite shocking win, to be real with you, against Sewell, the way that he gets this accomplished. So kind of frames him up for a moment and then almost disappears, if you will, over the top, because he's got Sewell ducking down and he swims over the top of him and gets to Goff. Like I said, fortunately for Detroit, this was called an incomplete pass and not a strip sack, but it really didn't matter because it was a turnover on downs because, like I said, in the lead-in, this one was on 4th down. My previews will generally try to focus on specific elements of the game this year when I can produce a preview. In fact, once the weeks get going and run together, it's very difficult to get things out before Friday or Saturday in terms of a preview. I do recognize that it is fashionable for many NFL fans to give the Packers credit for getting Parsons and going after it. I think that the price tag was incredibly high from a salary cap structure. Obviously, I'm not sure how it will turn out. I won't offer opinions there. There's a wide range of different possibilities. I don't know that it really changes things for Goff. I think Goff operates at a frequency that is just different. It's higher, sharper, and more consistent than many other quarterbacks around the league. Look at his completion percentage last year, and especially what he did against the Packers. Like I said, 50 of 63 passing against Green Bay in 2024, 79% completion percentage. When they have had success against Goff, slowed him down, it was only in that 2023 loss, right? He still threw for 332 yards and 2 touchdowns in that game. Now, it did take 44 passes to get that done. Efficiency is what carries Goff's game, what carries the Lions' offense, in fact. He's great at it, specifically against the Packers' defense. Jeff Hafley, I think, is the defensive coordinator. His work is cut out for him, for real. Parsons are not. One way to look at this as a Lions fan, and I'm not saying it's my perspective, but is a point of view that I considered, what if Green Bay does not get to Goff consistently? Well, then they're certainly not going to create multi-turnover games. How do they beat him? They don't. There's really no situation would have been better for the Packers than Week 14 in 2024, right? So many defensive players hurt for Detroit. They really had a compromised group out there defensively. Goff throws an interception. A 17-7 lead turns into a 21-17 deficit quick. Still, Goff is able to pull out the win. They take it 34-31 on the final possession of the game. Green Bay went 1-5 in the NFC North in 2024. And in fact, I think their only win was a 1-point win over the Bears, who in the final moments, final minute, was lining up like a 46 or 48-yard field goal to win it, that it eventually got blocked, I think, by Carl Brooks. My point is, Green Bay's margin for error is still a lot smaller than Detroit's. And a huge reason for that, in my opinion, is Jared Goff. His willingness and ability to execute a wide range of concepts, especially in high leverage situations, but also target a whole bunch of different receivers, tight ends, and running backs in those moments. And I think that's very unique. And the more film I watch of Goff and all kinds of quarterbacks and offenses across the league, the more unique I think that is. From my own coaching days, a phrase that I told you guys earlier, players, not plays, when the game is on the line. Goff, at least in his time spent with Ben Johnson, did not seem to adhere to that belief or that philosophy. And I think there's something to be said for it. Essentially, if this were basketball, you would say, hit the open man and allow that guy to make a shot in rhythm. And that's what Goff does. He gets the football out quickly, making exceptional reads. Maybe in the case of the one play that I showed you earlier, his reads are too quick in that he trusts where a defender should be based upon a particular coverage that he sees, that he identifies. In the next case, that corner, quote, cheated and didn't cover the flat route to Gibbs and jumped the snag to Tim Patrick. I think it kind of illustrates what Goff is capable of doing, even though in that case it happened to be a negative play, the interception. Hopefully I explained that in a way that makes sense. You're more than welcome to let me know if this preview went on too long. I just was able to figure out a way to use 2024 film, so I'm excited about that. Really looking forward to getting new film, 2025, out for you guys after the first game. Hopefully a win for the Lions in Green Bay. Appreciate you guys' time, man. If you enjoyed the video, please let me know in the comment section, number one. Number two, if you think other Lions fans would enjoy listening to some of my thoughts and also watching the film and the way that I try to break it down, then please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach.